Hi everyone. People who work with color pencils or pastels have given me great reviews about this pastel mat paper, and I wanted to try it with oil pastels and see how it works with my oil pastel works. So I got myself a pad and I'm going to review it today for oil pastels. So the disclaimer is that this is a product review for Pastelmat, but just how it works for oil pastels, not in general. And another important thing I'd like to mention here is that I'm not sponsored by Pastelmat or anybody else for this matter. These are just my personal opinions on how it works with oil pastels. So let's.
This is a Pastelmat pad, and it is a very heavy paper, 360 grams or 175 pounds for each sheet, and it has 12 sheets in it. It comes in 4 different colors: buttercup, maize, dark gray, and light gray. The buttercup and maize are kind of like 2 shades of cream, one a little bit more yellow, one a little bit more beige, and the 2 shades of gray, the lighter one is almost close to white, and the darker gray is what we more normally call as gray. This particular Pastelmat pad, when I bought it from Jerry's Artorama, was about $27. So each sheet is a little over $3, which is pretty expensive in the world of papers, specifically if you compare it with other pastel papers. For example, Métis, which I have used many times in the past for oil pastels. If you compare the two papers, Pastelmat and Métis, the Pastelmat has a much more natural feel to the tooth and texture, as far as the tooth and texture is concerned, and which I found a little bit more surprising. I was expecting much more tooth, but we'll test it out and see how that works out eventually. Also, Métis is a much thinner paper. It does not take wet medium very well, but Pastelmat should be able to handle a wet medium pretty nicely. We'll test that out as well in our demonstration. Another great feature about Pastelmat pads is that in between 2 sheets of Pastelmat paper there is a sheet of glassine, which will prevent the pastels or oil pastels or color pencils to transfer onto the back side of the previous paper. Glassine itself is kind of expensive and acid free, so it definitely adds value to this pad and makes it a better choice for serious artists. Definitely that is something that really impressed me about this pad. On to the actual painting. Typically when I do a product review, I do very sketchy drawing or painting and focus more on testing the product than actual demonstration or actual tutorial part. But in this case I wanted to test out the Pastelmat and see all the different potentials, possibilities, what works and what does not, and did a very detailed painting. So what I'm doing is I did an initial sketch with a white charcoal, and then I am doing a silhouette painting or an underpainting with a dark black, blue, or black and indigo mix of watercolors. You can also use gouache, but do not apply it very thickly because then it will take away the tooth of the paper. Now this underpainting stage was absolutely non-mandatory. You can totally skip this, but I wanted to see how the Pastelmat handled wet medium, and whether it can handle like it promises to. And it definitely passed the test. It doesn't even buckle when you put water or wet medium on top of it. So that's definitely an advantage so far into the painting. Now I'm adding different shades of blues and purples and a few shades of red and magentas onto my background, which is the sky. Typically in the nighttime sky you see much darker shades of blue and possibly some black. May not be this magentas and purples that I'm using, but I'm going for a much more surreal look in the nighttime sky, and that's why I chose the color palette to be much more brighter. I'm working on the gray colored Pastelmat paper because the dark gray Pastelmat paper, because the light gray is very close to white and it would be hard to cover, and the creams and will not work really well with the color palette that I'm working on this painting. Inside the surface of the moon, I'm using pretty much the similar colors as I'm used in the surrounding areas. So I'm using different shades of purple inside the moon. Once I added a little bit of the colors, I'm coming back with other shades of blue and adding more pigment, sometimes using the same color, sometimes varying it in different colors. So when I blend, it will have blend the colors. Some areas will have some solid colors while the other areas will have a mix of colors, and it will create a nice variety on the nighttime sky. Like I said, I'm going for a very surrealistic look, so this color palette works for that. But if you want a more realistic look for the nighttime sky, just stick to a more darker blue palette and that would work. Initially I was thinking of doing just a moon and nighttime sky, but then I like adding a little of figurative element, a bird or a woman or an animal of some kind in my compositions, and ended up adding this maiden, calling it the moon maiden, and completing my surreal look in this painting, I guess. So it is better to begin with a lot of pigments at first so that you get good coverage when you start blending. Now this case, you can see that I am using a paintbrush for blending, and I'm actually using odorless mineral spirits on my paintbrush for blending. When you use odorless mineral spirits, what you have to do is you dip the paintbrush, which I have a lot of old damaged paintbrushes which I keep separately just for this purpose. So you dip it into the container of odorless mineral spirits and then tap off the excess odorless mineral spirits on your brush on a rag or a paper towel, and then use the damp brush onto the surface of your paper so that there is no excess odorless mineral spirits. There is no way, any chance of dripping, because you do not want the odorless mineral spirit to run down the surface of the paper. And a little bit goes a long way for blending. This is a great way for blending oil pastels or color pencils, and I tried this one out for this particular painting or this particular video for product review because I wanted to see whether Pastelmat could handle odorless mineral spirits just like it did wet medium, and it passed the test very well. Some people do not like using odorless mineral spirits because it is kind of toxic in nature, but if you work in a kind of ventilated area, it's all good. You just need to make sure that you do not drain odorless mineral spirits down your water drainage system, and you will be just fine. And you really use very little odorless mineral spirits in this process, so you're hardly working with any toxic material. But it's totally up to you what kind of blending method you want to choose. I have a video on 8 different kinds of blending methods. You can choose any one of them to do your blending. I will link that in the video description below and also in the cards above. So I'm coming back with my next layer. When you are layering on top of one layer that you have blended with the odorless mineral spirits, one thing you need to make sure is that the previous layer is completely dry, because if you work on top of a wet layer that has odorless mineral spirits, you will not be able to put on enough pigments, and whatever you put on will get blended into the background surface. It will not stand out, so it will probably not add value to what you're trying to do. Now I'm adding some light white and light blue sky or cloud kind of illusions. So some of the lines I'm letting it be stand out and be sharp, but most of it I'm blending it off into the background. So that will give us a nice illusion of clouds in the nighttime sky. You can put little or more of the clouds, it really doesn't matter. It's kind of like a choice. I'm darkening the corners of the painting with darker blues and blacks. That kind of brings a little contrast to the painting. I always I'm a big fan of contrast. I hype up contrast wherever I can. I think that makes your artwork visually more attractive, and you kind of can guide the viewer's eyes to wherever is the main element of your painting by improving the contrast around it. Now I'm adding the stars. What I'm doing is I'm carefully adding little dots by using the sharp pointy end of my Holbein oil pastels. By the way, I'm using my Holbein pastels for this entire painting project. I have a 40-piece set, and all other the materials that I'm using in this painting is linked in the video description below, mentioned in the video description below, so you can check that out if you want to know about the materials. Now for adding stars, you can add as much or as little as you want. Just be a little careful that you do not apply too much pressure, then it tends to get a little bit longer. In that case, if you accidentally add a little bit more, then kind of push it back with your finger and blend it into the background surface and come back with a much brighter, smaller dot. In some of the stars, I'm making it a little bit bigger, and I'll add a little bit of yellow on top of the white to make it a little bit more glowing and bigger, and then I'll add a smaller white dot on top of it to make some of the stars a little more prominent than the others. And this is also, again, not a big deal. You can totally skip this process. You can totally even skip the stars. It does not really add too much to the painting, but I like to engage into smaller details and values. And I also wanted to test out how much layer and of oil pastels this paper takes, and apparently this takes layers on top of layers on top of layers, which is obviously great with my style of painting. I like to paint in layers, so Pastelmat obviously is going to be a great choice for oil pastels if you want to work in layers. Now I'm starting to work on the moon, and accidentally you get to see my head a lot more than I wanted you to see. So what I did is I created an outline first with my white. Then I'm coming back with some pinks on top of the moon, and then some magentas and crimsons from the set. You do not have to actually use the perfect colors or the exact colors that I'm using. It's more of like a surreal painting, so if you change it up a little bit, it will not really make a lot of difference. What you need to focus is to build up the contrast and have a little bit of kind of keep it similar to the surrounding, so that the entire painting ties together. And I really apologize for my head coming in between. I should have been more careful with the camera placement. Anyways, but you still get the hang of what I'm doing. Next time I'll be more careful, of course. I'm still just adding the layer of pigments here, and once I'm done with the layer of pigments, you can see that I'm just gently blending. I don't want all of the elements that I've put to blend completely with each other. I want some of the sharp elements to stay that way, so I just blended a tiny bit, just pushed a little bit of those back gently with just tapping with my fingers. You can use any blending tools for that matters, but since I was wearing gloves, it will not dirty my hands, so I used my hands only. But make sure you keep wiping your fingers into the rag so that it doesn't have the colors staying from your previous time you used your fingers for blending. Otherwise it will get all the colors muddled together, and it will have a very muddy effect, which you really do not want. So yes, whenever you're working with oil pastels, keep rags or paper towels handy to clean your oil pastels, as well as your fingers and blending tools. That is a general tip with whenever you're working with oil pastels. Now the final thing that I'm going to do on my moon is that I'm going to add some striations on the moon. So these are like irregular lines that I'm creating, kind of giving the hint of the craters on the moon. There is a scientific term they use for the craters on the moon, but I do not know that. I don't remember that, and I'm not here trying to be astronomically perfect or trying to create a very realistic moon here. This is a very surreal painting. It doesn't even I'm not even trying to follow the color code or look. I'm just trying to make it look like a moon, but not exactly like a moon, if that makes any sense at all. Anyways, surreal paintings doesn't really make much sense when it comes to logic. So I guess that works out. And I really liked the look of these little lines that I'm creating. Overall, it looked magical at the very end. Once the entire painting is done, it will tie it all together and looks really nice. At least I think so. Obviously, if you beg to differ, do share your comments in the video description below. And also let me know if you have any other questions regarding Pastelmat or the tutorial in general. This actually became one of my favorite paintings quickly. So you get two things in one package. You get a full-blown tutorial, surreal oil pastel tutorial, as well as a product review. I guess that's kind of like a bonus. Let me know the thoughts about the product or the product review. If you have any questions, if you have any questions about the tutorial, if you have any questions about oil pastel in general, I always try to answer all the questions that viewers leave me in the comment section. If you like the painting, obviously give me a thumbs up. That makes the whole world of difference to me. Right now what I'm doing is just adding blues and blacks to the silhouette that I previously created with watercolor, and then I'm adding a little bit of grays and white to the sides just to create the reflection of the moon. I'm using mostly grays here because white kind of will stand out too much, and I do not want the attention to go to the figure completely. The moon here is centrally located, so it should take the prime royalty as well as far as attention is concerned. So I'll add very little white and mostly grays to create the reflection thing. That pretty much is all about this painting and product review. Like I said, if you have any additional questions, let me know. And if you're not subscribed already to my channel, I post new tutorials every Wednesday and Friday, and sometimes do additional live streams and such over the weekends as well. So do consider subscribing, and obviously share your thoughts, share the painting, because sharing is caring. I'll see you back soon. Hope you liked the product review and the oil pastel tutorial. Thank you once again.